Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon on April 12th, 2026 for Reason to Resist. To all of our brothers and sisters in the Orthodox world, let me begin by wishing you all a peaceful and prosperous Easter Sunday. Now, minutes ago, as I was preparing to record this report, the New York Times and many other media outlets reported that the negotiations between Iran and the Trump regime in Pakistan appear to have failed. And here you see a live update issued a short while ago by the New York Times. The Times quoted the United States Vice President JD Vance, who led the U.S. negotiating team, as stating that, quote, "They have chosen not to accept our terms," close quote. Now, this sounded like a clear rejection by Iran of the U.S. terms, whatever they may be. But then Vance appeared to contradict himself and suggested that the U.S. terms remained under Iran's consideration. He stated, "We leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it." So which is it, Mr. Vance? Have Iranian officials chosen not to accept the Trump regime's best and final offer, or do they continue to consider that offer? Statements from the Iranian delegation have not yet clarified the situation. Esmail Bakai, the spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry, said on social media earlier on Sunday that the discussions in Pakistan, quote, "were held on various dimensions of the main negotiation topics, including the Strait of Hormuz, the nuclear issue, war reparations, lifting of sanctions, and the complete end to the war against Iran and in the region." Mr. Bakai, who was in Pakistan as part of the Iranian delegation, added that the success of the talks depended on the United States, quote, "acceptance of Iran's legitimate rights and interests." Now, according to the New York Times, as Mr. Vance was detailing the impasse in negotiations, Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio were at a sports arena in Miami for the Ultimate Fighting Championship 327, watching a video montage of past fights. Yes, the global economy hangs in the balance, as do countless lives in West Asia, including American lives, and they're watching some blood sport on a big screen. Earlier in this evening, or the evening, from Washington, Mr. Trump had projected nonchalance, says the New York Times, claiming it did not matter to him whether the U.S. delegation reached an agreement with Iran. Quote, "We win regardless. We've defeated them militarily." That apparently is why Trump was desperately trying to secure a ceasefire and enter into some kind of negotiation with the Islamic Republic. Now, this language being employed by Vance, our best and final offer, that kind of smacks of the attitude that the U.S. is in a position to dictate terms to Iran. But the U.S. is in no such position at all. And Mr. Trump needs to get a grip on the reality of the situation before he completely destroys the global economy by pursuing this blatantly unlawful war of aggression against the Islamic Republic. Now, since I arrived in Lebanon during the evening of April 9th, Israel has not attacked Beirut. If, in fact, these talks fail, I would not at all be surprised if the savagery of the Israeli aggressor is again inflicted upon the people of this fine city. Although Israel has refrained from bombing Beirut since its massacres on April 2nd, it continues to send drones into the skies of Beirut, or alternatively, one of its Western supporters, like the British, who have a base in the south of Cyprus called Atrocities. They are perhaps the ones who are sending drones into the skies of Beirut. In any case, last night, for the third night in a row, I could hear a drone overhead as I walked in the area of Hamra in the western part of Beirut, and here is what I heard. I shot that video at around 9 p.m. local time yesterday, and that sound could be heard distinctly for hours during the evening and the early hours of April 12th. Now, despite the restraint, I guess you could call it that Israel has shown in Beirut since I arrived in Lebanon on April 9th, it has continued to conduct murderous strikes on South Lebanon. And yesterday, I traveled deep into South Lebanon when I visited the city of Nabatieh. Nabatieh lies in a zone that is covered by an Israeli evacuation order, and therefore the vast majority of its residents have fled the city and been displaced. In fact, I've been to Nabatieh several times over the past 2.5 years, and I have never seen it anywhere close to this deserted, nor have I seen it anywhere close to this destroyed. Nonetheless, despite the evacuation order and the level of destruction, key government officials, essential government officials, have continued to work in Nabatieh. On April 10th, however, Israel bombed Nabatieh and murdered 13 Lebanese state security officials. And here is a report published on that day by Al Arabiya. You'll see a photograph centered there of the aftermath of that devastating strike. A mass funeral was held for those 13 martyrs yesterday in the southern Lebanese coastal city of Saida. I attended the mass funeral, and during the funeral, as you'll see and hear in the footage I'll show you a little later in this report, we heard loud explosions nearby. It was difficult to say whether those were the sounds of Israeli warplanes breaking the sound barrier or whether they were explosions. It could have been either, but whatever they may have been, the explosions were clearly intended to intimidate the 1,000 or so mourners who had gathered for this mass funeral. If in fact that was the goal, the intimidation failed. If anything, it simply heightened the indignation of the people who were present there. You'll also see in the video footage that I'm going to share with you shortly that while we were in the deserted city of Nabatieh, we heard an Israeli warplane overhead, and as it seemed to get closer, we felt it necessary to take some precautionary measures. But before I show you the footage from the mass funeral and my visit to the city, the site of the atrocity in Nabatieh, I wanted to update you on other important developments in the Trump-Netanyahu war on Iran and Lebanon. First, and according to the New York Times, the U.S. and Israel have now killed at least 1,701 civilians, including 254 children in Iran as of April 8th. Israel, by contrast, reports that at least 20 people have been killed in Israel as of Monday, April 6th. Now, if these figures are correct, then the U.S. and Israel have killed 85 times as many civilians in Iran as Iran has killed in Israel. The number of Iranian children killed by the U.S. and Israel, just the children, is 12 times higher than the total number of civilians, both adult and children, that Iran is said to have killed in Israel during this criminal war of aggression on Iran. In addition, Lebanon's health ministry reported yesterday that Israel has massacred 2,020 people in Lebanon since Trump and Netanyahu launched their war of aggression, their latest one, on February 28th. This means that Israel has killed 101 times as many civilians in Lebanon as have been killed by both Iran and Hezbollah in Israel during this period. So you tell me, folks, who are the terrorists in this scenario? The only way to conclude that the terrorists are Iran and Hezbollah, I submit to you, and that the terrorists are not the United States and Israel, would be to attach zero or almost zero value to the lives of Iranians and Lebanese. This, of course, would make you a racist. Now, yesterday, I issued a report in which I accused Israel of committing genocide in Lebanon. Since then, I've learned of more genocidal language coming out of Israel. Listen to this statement from the psychopath Yoni Ben Menachem. He's an Israeli journalist and a senior researcher at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Before that, Ben Menachem was the general director and chief editor of the Israel Broadcasting Authority.
צריך לעשות זה לנצל עכשיו את הפסקת האש, ואת זה ראינו אתמול, שצה"ל פעל נכון, כל הכוח האווירי שהתפנה מזה שהפסקנו בגלל הפסקת האש לתקוף באיראן, הוא עובר ללבנון, והמכה הייתה חזקה מאוד. מכה הזאת זה צעד נכון בכיוון הנכון, אבל אנחנו צריכים לתקוף את כל הריכוזים השיעים בלבנון, לא רק בדרום לבנון. בעל בק, כל העדה השיעית הזאת צריכים ללמד אותה לקח, כדי שהם יפעילו לחץ פנימי על חיזבאללה.
So he's praising the massacres of April 8th, which I've already covered on this program. And he's saying that we have to hit the Shiite community and Shiite concentrations so that they will put internal pressure on Hezbollah. This depraved criminal doctrine is otherwise known as the Dahiya doctrine, which derives from the southern suburb of Beirut known as Dahiya, and which has taken absolute horrific beating during this latest aggression on Lebanon. I reported from Dahiya, in fact, for a reason to resist yesterday, and I have on prior trips to Lebanon as well, and seen the devastation there. This doctrine has never worked, not in the decades that Israel has applied it, by terrorizing and inflicting suffering upon the civilian population of some targeted country. You don't effect regime change, nor do you cause the people to force their leaders, their representatives, to capitulate to the aggressor. If anything, it simply hardens the determination of the targeted population. And we've seen this not only in Lebanon again and again, we are watching it in real time happen in Iran, where there is probably a higher level of national unity than there has been at any time during the past several years, even decades, in the Islamic Republic. Why do they do it nonetheless? Why do the Israelis insist on murdering civilians with the ostensible purpose of trying to get their representatives or leaders to change their policies and make them more subservient to Israel? I don't know. I mean, I can only hazard a guess that it's just pure bloodlust. And it also is somehow, from their perspective, the Israeli perspective, effective propaganda, because the killing, the mass killing of civilians from the targeted population perhaps conveys to the Israeli electorate that the Israeli government is in a dominant position. But this is simply a sign of weakness. Mass murdering civilians is a sign of weakness, not a sign of strength, Mr. Ben Menachem. Now, I want to show you some other rather troubling language that has been coming out of Israeli media within the past several days. Other Israeli commentators just admitted that Israel has been trying to provoke a civil war in Lebanon. Listen to this recent exchange of two murderous talking heads on Israeli Channel 13.
זה נראה שאנחנו מובילים את מדינת לבנון לעבר מלחמת אזרחים, אולי זה לא רע לנו. שהממשלה הלבנונית תילחם בחיזבאללה.
זו השאיפה מההתחלה, לא בטוח כרגע שבמצבה הנוכחי יש לה את הכוח, אז היום עוד שני איתותים נקרא להם, עוד פעם תקיפה של תשתיות קשרים מעל הליטני.
So Alon is in complete agreement with the interviewer that the goal from the outset, Israel's goal from the outset, has been to provoke a civil war in Lebanon, which of course would be extraordinarily painful and horrific for the civilian population, just as was the last civil war, which ended in 1990. But the pain and suffering of innocent civilians means nothing to these maniacs, obviously. And you'll notice that Alon expressed skepticism that the Israelis would succeed in provoking another civil war. However, if the current Lebanese Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, continues to negotiate with the people who are murdering his own security officials, he might just end up playing right into Israel's hands and provoking some kind of civilian violence, amounting perhaps even to another civil war. Now, in retaliation for Israel's ongoing genocide in Lebanon, the Lebanese resistance continues to strike Israel hard. Here is a statement published yesterday, April 11th, or this morning, I should say. This was published this morning, but it relates to the military operations conducted by the Lebanese resistance yesterday, April 11th, and it identifies in considerable detail 37 separate military operations against the Israeli aggressor. Those military operations, I went through this statement in some detail and can summarize it as follows. Yesterday, the resistance states that it conducted 25 attacks on Israel's genocide forces in South Lebanon, and it also launched attacks on 13 colonies and military bases in northern occupied Palestine. The two colonies that were struck the most often were, as usual, Metula, which is both a community of civilians and a military base perched atop a hill, and Kiryat Shimona, which received 3 attacks. Metula was struck 4 separate times yesterday, says the resistance, and Kiryat Shimona was struck 3 separate times. Both Metula and Kiryat Shimona have significant military value to Israel. A significant presence of the military is there, has been from a very long time. And both of these communities have been absolutely pummeled since Israel launched its genocide in Gaza in October 2023. We've reported on that on numerous occasions on Reason to Resist. The resistance continues, for its part, to publish many videos of its military operations. So it's not just claims being made in writing. They're backing this up with video evidence. There were quite a slew of operational videos published yesterday. I'm going to show you one. This is a video, according to the resistance, of an attack on the northern Israeli colony of Kiryat Shimona. Now, one other thing I wish to address before I turn to my excursion yesterday to Saida and Nabatieh is the claim that emerged within the last 14 or 15 hours that U.S. naval vessels just passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Barak Ravid, who works for the media outlet Axios, reported yesterday that according to the ubiquitous unnamed U.S. official. How many reports have we seen in Axios from unnamed U.S. officials during this war? According to such an official, 2 U.S. naval vessels passed through the Strait of Hormuz into the Persian Gulf and then returned back through the Strait of Hormuz into the Arabian Sea. And according to Axios, these naval vessels from the United States passed through the Strait of Hormuz without coordinating with the Iranian military, suggesting that the United States suddenly, during a period where there are negotiations taking place between Iran and the United States, and both sides are refraining from attacking each other. Suddenly, the U.S. Navy has somehow discovered a way to transit safely through the Strait of Hormuz. According to this article, this operation was part of a broader mission, quote, to ensure the strait is fully clear of sea mines previously laid by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Such were the claims of CENTCOM. The article also says that additional U.S. forces, and it's citing CENTCOM again for this statement, including underwater drones, will join the clearance effort in the coming days. Quote, today we began the process of establishing a new passage, and we will share this safe pathway with the maritime industry soon to encourage the free flow of commerce, close quote, said Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of CENTCOM. Iran, for its part, denies that U.S. naval vessels pass through the Gulf, so it's unclear who's telling the truth, but for what it's worth, folks, my opinion is that this Axios report is completely and utterly worthless. Why do I say that? Well, there are at least three reasons. First, the U.S. official is unidentified. And if this story were true, it's such wonderful news, and it makes the U.S. Navy look so much better than it has up until now. Why wouldn't the U.S. official identify him or herself? Why do this anonymously if the story's true? I can't think of a good reason. Second, the story was published by Axios, which has proven itself repeatedly, not just with Trump, but under the Biden administration, to be an uncritical mouthpiece of the U.S. government. Third, the author of the story is an Israeli citizen. His name, again, is Barak David. And as Glenn Greenwald noted on X, not only did David serve in the Israeli genocide forces until 2024, in other words, he served in them even after the genocide began in Gaza, but he also served in Israel's notorious intelligence unit, 8200. The obvious goal of this planted story, I would suggest, is to calm oil markets if and when negotiations with Iran fail. Trump wants the world to believe that whatever the outcome of those negotiations, the U.S. Navy, the mighty U.S. Navy, will finally succeed in taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. The man, I believe, is delusional, not just for this reason, but for a host of reasons. And so to be perfectly blunt about it, is anyone who believes this. Even if the Ravid story is true, it doesn't mean that the U.S. Navy will be able to restore maritime traffic to its pre-war level. It is one thing for U.S. naval vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz at a time when Iran is refraining from firing upon U.S. military assets and Israel because of the 2-week ceasefire. It is quite another to persuade maritime shipping companies and insurers that it's a good idea to send oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz, because it's the easiest thing in the world, as I've explained over and over again. And I was in the Strait of Hormuz. I saw it with my own eyes about 10 days ago, as I reported here. It's the easiest thing in the world for Iran to take out, any number of oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. These are very slow-moving targets. They are very big, and they are highly combustible, and they have to pass very close to the coastline of Iran and to islands, heavily fortified islands belonging to Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has a variety of ways to take them out. It's not just the mines. Even if they clear the mines, well, first of all, Iran can just lay more mines. There's no reason to believe that it has put all the mines in its possession into the Strait of Hormuz. There's no reason to believe that it can't manufacture more mines if it needed to. It can also strike them with drones. It can strike the tankers, It can strike them with drones. It can strike them with missiles. Iran has diesel submarines. It can strike them with those. It has underwater drones. It has ship-to-ship missiles. It has, again, any number of ways. They can blow up tankers in the Persian Gulf until the cows come home, 6 ways from Sunday. Pick your cliche, and there's not a damn thing that the U.S. Navy can do about it. The real question here is not whether U.S. naval vessels can get through the Gulf. Rather, the real question is whether they can protect the oil tankers, these very, very juicy and easy to strike targets, if they were to attempt a passage through the Strait of Hormuz without the consent of the Iranian military. And there's just no reason to believe that the answer to that question is yes. I think it's quite telling, just to conclude on this point, that the two naval vessels that allegedly went into the Persian Gulf didn't stay there. They just did a U-turn and went right back out again. Why is that, folks? Well, I think the most plausible explanation is that if and when the negotiations fail, those naval vessels will themselves be sitting ducks if they remain in the Persian Gulf. So if they did in fact pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they wisely hightailed it out of there as soon as they made their point, which is nothing but a point of propaganda. So with that, let's turn now to my trip to Nabatieh yesterday. I traveled from Beirut to the coastal city of Saida by car. In Saida, I attended the mass funeral for the 13 Lebanese security officers murdered by Israel in Nabatieh on April 10th. And from there, I traveled by car to Nabatieh, which lies inland from the Mediterranean coast, about 30 minutes from Saida by car. On this journey, I was accompanied by our comrades Laith Marouf and Hadi Hotait of Free Palestine TV. Between Saida and Nabatieh, we heard the sound of an Israeli drone overhead. And the sound, according to Hadi, who's very, very familiar with Israeli military assets, having covered extensively Israel's military operations in South Lebanon, that sound, according to him, was the sound of an Israeli Heron drone. And the Heron drone is known to be a sophisticated tool for intelligence gathering. Now, after my trip to Nabatieh, when I had returned to Beirut a couple of hours later, I made a troubling discovery. I discovered that the VPN on my smartphone and on my laptop were connected to Israel at the time that to a location within Israel at the time that I returned to my hotel in Beirut. And here you can see a snapshot, a screenshot I took last night, a couple of hours after I made this discovery. For 139 minutes, this was the period during which I was in Nabatieh and then on the road back from Nabatieh to Beirut. For 139 minutes, I was connected to a location in Israel. When I discovered this, I switched back immediately to the normal location to which I connect with my VPN, one in Canada. And you can see there at the bottom, another location that I use frequently is in Greece. From time to time, I've had occasion to connect to a location in France. I have never, ever, on either my laptop or my smartphone, connected my VPN to a location in Israel. Not only that, but I'm not aware of a single instance in which my VPN connected to a certain location without me clicking on and choosing that location. So somehow, without me taking any action, without me wanting it, my VPN switched to Israel, a location in Israel. I've never experienced anything like this before. Now, I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable about the capabilities of Israel's Heron drone or other intelligence gathering assets to say whether Israeli intelligence managed to switch my VPN to Israel while I was in South Lebanon, nor do I have the technological sophistication to say what that would mean in terms of my own cybersecurity if Israel was able to pull that off. And so anyone watching this report who is knowledgeable enough to comment, to shed light on these two questions, I certainly encourage you to do so in the comment section for this video. Now, with no further ado, here is my report from South Lebanon. As I indicated, it begins in Saida at the mass funeral and ends in Nabatieh. Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist on April 11, 2026 from the city of Saida on the southern coast of Lebanon. Yesterday, the Israeli aggressor massacred 12 state security officials in the city of Nabatieh. We're going to be heading there shortly, and hopefully we'll be able to enter the city and to report there what happened. But here today, the funeral procession is taking place. We just witnessed it. The aggressor struck twice. And you can see this in a video clip that will be published by Free Palestine TV. We were doing a report. I was speaking to Leith Marouf, Executive Director of Free Palestine TV, when the aggressor struck. And we were talking in that report, and I want to highlight for you on our channel, Reason to Resist, there's a high level of anger here, because as these massacres are being perpetrated upon the people of Lebanon, the so-called Prime Minister of the country, Nawaf Salam, is negotiating with the aggressor, apparently with a view to entering into some kind of a peace agreement or normalization process, even as it carries out what I believe to be a genocide here in the country of Lebanon.
Today was the funeral of 12 state security officers. We are in Saida. These 12 security officers, state security officers, were assassinated by the Zionists in an attack on their barracks in Nabatieh city, in the middle sector of the border between Palestine and Lebanon. And as we can see, people are really angry because these officers were doing their duty. They were not a part of the resistance, but their main job was to make sure the state of Lebanon is secure. That's their duties. So they are there to fight espionage and spies, infiltrators in the country, terrorists in the country, and the Zionists decided to target them the same day that the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Nawaf Salam, was beginning negotiations with the enemy of humanity across the border. So the population is really angry, the families are angry, and as we were in the funeral, there was multiple attacks that we can hear around Saida. So this is signal anything. It's definitely going to signal that the end of Nawaf Salam and his government is very near. Because if these officers that are responsible for maintaining security of the state have given up on those who run the state, then there's no security for the state, that's for sure.
It was just another airstrike. You may be able to hear a jet engine overhead. There's a fourth one. That is the fourth strike that has happened within the past 30 minutes here in Saida as this funeral of 12 state security officials was taking place. We're in the town of Nabatieh in South Lebanon, north of the Litani River. We are standing in front of the site where yesterday an airstrike killed 12 officials of the National Security Agency of the State of Lebanon. We just attended their funeral in Saida. There is tremendous destruction here. This is much worse than what I witnessed the last time that I was in South Lebanon, which is approximately 14 months ago. And the city is largely deserted. We can hear a warplane, the jet engine overhead. On our way here, we had to get off the main road and come by way of a side road because we received a report that a drone strike on a vehicle had killed 5 martyrs a couple of hours earlier on the main road. So we're in a bit of a hurry to hightail it out of here, but I'm just going to give you a quick view of the level of destruction. It's not, of course, just the building that was behind me a moment ago, this one, where the 12 security officials were killed, but here behind me as well, you can see this entire street. There's devastation everywhere, and there was quite a bit that we saw on our way into Nabatieh, but our guide, Hadi Hotait of Press TV, advised me that in the areas we were traveling through, I was not permitted to film for security reasons. We are still in Nabatieh. We had to stop filming and disperse because the sound of a jet aircraft overhead became considerably louder. You may be able to hear it. And so we thought it prudent to disperse. This, by the way, behind me is a 200-year-old building that was destroyed by the aggressor during the past several weeks. You can see all the way down the street damage everywhere to the civilian infrastructure. So we're going to head out now quickly. We've made a quick stop here. The jet seems to have moved away from us, and we'll be back to you from other parts of South Lebanon shortly.